Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We have a series. Revival come back, and now it is match point between the two, as both teams are 1-1 in this best of three. And remember, folks, this is elimination, single elimination for the play-in stage today. Starting tomorrow, we'll have double elimination, but either Revival or Winthrop is going home. And for this composition that Revival had, there's not many ways for Winthrop University to have access to this backline reliably. It takes a really precise execution on flanks and being able to time your utility from the Oriana with the Olaf so that you can actually get access to the backline in Victor and Kaisa without getting blown up. And early on, Kelsey, as we can see the first replay going, we saw that Frost Force was able to have a little bit of impact in actually setting up hybrids for success as well in the top lane.
Yeah, I think the early gank coming out of Frost Forest put Sion in sort of an awkward position. He had flash blown, and then the wave is pushing out here. I think he kind of just misjudged the damage a little bit. I'm not sure how much the flash had an impact, but in general, it seemed like the Aatrox getting ahead ended up being very, very useful overall for Winthrop.
But then, looking forward into for Revival, however, Cyber knowingly being able to punish the fact that this was a Olaf early pick by picking Graves, which is a pretty good matchup, isolated 1v1, and normally we don't like to talk about it just being in a vacuum. But in this case, when you find him in the river early on and you are running Ignite and with Phase Rush, you have the movement speed to be able to run him down. And because of this Alk battery, they also had a bot lane swap towards the top side preemptively planned. So this Rift Herald take actually accelerates Scoop's Kaisa into the mid game.
Yeah, this is the one thing that we were loving coming out from Revival that I know Kelsey mentioned before, was that Revival beforehand were really over-prioritizing on wanting to go for these rotations, going for these swaps, but finally we had one where we were really excited for them, like, okay, good, we're not just giving Jinx free lanes, this is a Kaisa, we're accelerating the Kaisa, and that's fine, we're doing well for ourselves. This is when we start to see them for Winthrop anyway, you're saying, hey, when we time our engages well and we're able to find our really good flanks, this is when it starts to look really good. Revival, I think we're getting a little bit too much. They're trying to be a little bit greedy here, trying to get a little bit of extra vision down into that bot side. They enter with no vision, and this is when we start to see Winthrop anyway get to really play with their team composition, where Senna is there empowering her Aatrox and her and really just bring some of that strength that we were looking for this team.
And taking advantage of Kaisa being a little bit slow on the rotation, we had a bit of an advantage coming out from the Senna and Tom Kench. They were able to collapse quickly. We wanted to see a little bit more plays with the Tom Kench being able to look for collapses. They attempted a few of them, but there weren't a whole lot that ended up coming to fruition.
Yeah, we had another collapse on the top side where Sudsy was slightly overextended. This wasn't actually a result of Tom Kench collapse, since Saskio, Doxa, and Frost Forest are enough resources to actually make it happen. But this is where Revival start realizing that, you know what, they need to start looking for ways getting back into the game, because if Winthrop were getting away with just making collapses on the side lanes without any punishment, then the Revival would slowly start bleeding out. But them getting this pick onto hybrids here, Alk battery kind of saves in terms of the gold lead that hybrids was looking for. And even though Winthrop are able to run down a couple members here, Revival still have not lost, or Scoop does not die here, which is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, it was just, there was a lot of damage in this fight, but realistically, like we were saying, the TK in most of these fights is just kind of absent. Just before that play, we see him actually just walking down river into mid lane, trying to cover for his lanes, and that was a really unfortunate situation where Aatrox is just caught, and he's able to survive for a pretty long time. I see Kelsey over there, she's like, oh, shut up.
No.
You're fine.
I just
want to make sure.
No, you're good. I think it's true that the Tom Kench was absent, but I think one of the bigger factors in that one is just the Aatrox making so much time. Revival trying to get a trade play here, but this was definitely the most significant play of the game, where you can see the interaction in general. So first of all, what we don't see here is how Revival set this up. They basically had full vision control of the top side, forcing the short-range champions of Winthrop to phase check into them, where they were able to use their AoE basically burned down the Baron, and then the coordination, as Rafa pointed out, just also wasn't there from Winthrop to get a good flank angle off.
Yeah, the like three things. Kelsey already pointed out that Aatrox TP was significantly farther away than when Frost Force was because he was soloing the dragon. If you want to contest for Baron, then you need to be there with the team to be able to execute everything together. But we saw Ori Shockwave being burned on the Baron for harass, so you don't have that to combo either with hybrids or Frost Force already getting access into the backline. Hybrids goes in before the rest of the team is ready, so he's essentially tanking and absorbing a lot of damage that does not get traded efficiently for the side of Winthrop. And then finally, Frost Force shows up when Hybrids is already dead. There's no Shockwave, there's no utility to follow up, and so Frost Force runs in and is like, oh crap, we actually have no follow-up. I can't do anything here. And so he has to run out. And they succeed the fight. And off of that Baron alone, even though Revival had been, quote-unquote down in terms of tempo for the majority of the game, losing picks and whatnot across the map, that completely negates the entire first half of the game from Winthrop University and just puts them back. And then at that point on, you saw that any of the fights that Winthrop tried to look for were completely nullified just because of the tools that, at that point, Revival had access to, Dimitri.
I really loved Winthrop's patience, at least through most of this game. Before that Baron play, we saw them actually wait, like Revival were waiting in the brush because they had so much of that vision, but because they had that ward onto Baron, Revival were not able to find anybody just walking into a bush in case Winthrop needed to get vision, and they were playing really patiently up until that Baron fight. It's the small things that I think are starting to make the difference for Winthrop between them and Revival. Revival were doing a really good job in terms of keeping themselves in the game, and finally they're able to break it open. For Winthrop, it is just like, it's so heartbreaking at that point. And we even saw that it got to a point where Victor is just fighting people with his wallet. He's making fancy plays, says he's walking all over the enemy team, and Olaf is sitting there with his team as just he gets a chaos storm, and the phase rush for Sudsy just makes it so difficult for the entirety of Winthrop to get on top of him.
I know you had something remark about the draft as well, Kelsey, when Winthrop locked in their first pick of choice as
Yeah, I'm just
Olaf
not
first
as big of a fan of the first pick Olaf anymore. I think there's a lot of answers to it. The clear speed is a lot lower now with the Q nerf. And then in general, we were had a good conversation where you guys were talking about the gore drinker, right, being less effective as well now. So I feel like there's just so many answers to him. He has to run in to be effective. I did like the pairing of the Senatom Kench Olaf, but they just weren't able to find the good opportunities. And I think Revival's composition had too many answers to it. So where I felt like Revival's composition in game one was a little bit awkward in general in terms of planning it out fully, I feel like they just really gravitated towards, okay, how do we counter this first pick Olaf, and had a much cleaner draft going into the second game.
Last thoughts, Dimitri, as we are just about wrapping up our segment before we get into break and get ready for Game 3. Looking at Winthrop, I just want to see, what do you expect for them to change the draft going into this final game?
Turns out Kelsey's pretty right on most things, and that is that jungle is pretty good. Jungle is a really great role, so maybe we see a little bit of a change in terms of what they want to prioritize, because I know coming into this matchup, the Frost Force versus Revival is kind of a little bit of a mismatch, but I think there's a lot of good things that they can do to try and cover for Frost Forest, and we have to see a little bit of that in Game 1. I'm looking forward to see how they kind of empower this guy, because Frost Forest and Doxa are still very dangerous when given the tools, and I don't think we've quite seen that yet.
All right. Well, Deserox and Joshi are actually standby on ready to take us to Game 3. Gentlemen, take us away.
Oh, hello.
Hello. Kind of catch me off guard there, but welcome back to the Unified Grand Prix play-ins, Revival versus Winthrop, and already we are getting into Champ Select right now. One of the more impactful champions that we wanted to talk about was Graves, and he's already showing his face here on the Riff. I mean, When it came to the jungler matchup, the Graves with Ignite was impactful. It stopped a lot of that region that we were talking about, and it had the 1v1 matchup against Olaf, someone who's notorious for winning 1v1 matches early.
Yeah, I mean, we talked on the Ignite. It gave Cyber a lot of opportunities to go for these plays, but the biggest thing is his ability to read where Olaf was on the map and consistently take away camps. And of course, the biggest highlight for that 1v1 was when Cyber just killed Frost Forest. Excuse me. Yeah, Cyber just killed Frost Forest as they were just like coming into the mid lane. It's like, oh, my mid laner has no flash. You're going to try and come gank him. Let me put a stop to that. And he did so in huge fashion. But now we see another big gun going onto the other side as Saskio going to be playing the Jinx. So I really like just hacking Jinx onto compositions simply because you have the same kind of ability to, you know, you have other threats. You need people to also find resets for you. Yeah, you can play like super front to back and draft a couple of tanks, or you can just kill them, and kill them comps are very effective.
Yeah, and that's the J4 getting locked in again for Frost. And game number 1, it was successful. It was great. It was it's a very diverse champ that can do a lot, and it had its impact. Meanwhile, on the other side for Revival, you see it. I see it. It's Kai'Sa getting locked in for Scooped, and I mean, come on, it's Scooped. He loves Kai'Sa as much as Saskio loves Kai'Sa. Like we kept talking about how much they were going to fight over this champion, and it's something where now that Jinx is much more heavy a priority, it does give a little leeway for the other side, in this case Blue, to be able to grab that Kai'Sa.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that there's double marksman coming out from Revival once again. They're also grabbing the Alistar, so they have, again, you know, a little bit more early game power, which was their major issue in game 1, and they were able to play through it in game 2, and oh my god, they're finally doing it. We've been seeing so much Jarvan, and I don't understand it on its own, but when you get the Galio, suddenly you have a reason to pick this champion. You lock 4 people in this little cage, and then you drop this giant statue on top of them, and that's going to be incredibly good for these fights.
It is the hero's cataclysm. It is a work of art when you get that wombo combo going through. But I don't just want to like harp on too much for that dive potential, because it is juicy. But the other thing juicy to me is how well this could protect Saskio when we get towards the skirmishes.
Yeah, it really is. And so, one, you can use it to try and keep people out. Of course, you got to make sure that Saskio has his flash, so he can get out of the cataclysm as well, or otherwise you're going to get a lot of I'm Jarvan, I'm helping kind of memes coming through. But you have a lot of protection just coming out from this Galio. And, you know, honestly, it can be played by both Doxa and Kenji, but I'm expecting it to be a little bit more likely to be played by Kenji, simply because early picking this mid lane for Doxa, unless you get a good matchup from the side of Revival, doesn't seem like the way that Winthrop is likely to play.
Mm-hmm. So now we're headed into the second phase of the draft. Wukong, Orianna, Camille all taken off the table. We're getting a little bit more of a top focus this time around. So concept of Vex, hybrids, you better keep your eyes close on what's about to be drafted. Still waiting to see what potentially it can go for. I mean, the fight so far has been over the Aatrox. Aatrox has been kind of a little bit of a priority pick throughout this matchup so far. We have seen some little head scratchers with the... what did we see last game? I gotta throw that to the side for a second. My mind's going blank. But one thing that is kept open at the moment is... Oh, Malphite was the one I was thinking of. One thing that is kept up at the moment is the Gnar, so that's potentially on the table, as Winthrop just loved to just show us that Zed, but never really lock it in. It kind of reminds me of Whippo and Kai'Sa with his girlfriend. But we're just talking about Gnar. It's getting hovered. It's probably going to be locked in right there.
Yeah, so this Gnar is interesting, right? Because it's absolutely playing for the team. You know the traditional combo of Jarvan Galio. There's also the traditional combo of Jarvan and Gnar, the Narvan combo. You just jump on top of them, suddenly you just have a lot of terrain, so it's super easy to land Gnar's ultimate and throw a ton of people into terrain and get the extra damage and the stun. But the danger comes in from the fact that the champion you already mentioned, Malphite, Seraphine is just now getting picked! I just assumed she was banned.
Man, I think they forgot about her. So, Seraphine, you know, we talk about presence. She's one of the queens of it, but she's much more heavy on the ban side. This champ gets banned like no tomorrow, but she's finally on the Rift, and we're going to see her played. Well, we're picked to come in, and hovering over right now, Revival. Whoo, wee boy. They're going to lock in the Scion.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's not a Malphite, but I'm just like shocked because this huge engage composition that was getting drafted from Winthrop, suddenly it looks a lot weaker against something like this Seraphine, right? You just throw down the ultimate and all of these big tanky boys locked in place for Revival's double marksman to start shredding them. I have to imagine that Winthrop is kind of reeling at this point because the fact that they haven't instantly locked their mid laner says that they don't have a strong Seraphine counter in mind. They end up going with the Zoe for Doxa, which will allow them to bully a little bit early on and also pick people later in the game, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to do because if you don't get the sleep down onto Sudsy, he throws a double root right on back and suddenly Doxa is going to have the crowd control turned right on top of him, and there are definitely tools for Revival to continue just running at Zoe.
Look at right here, Joshi. I am an ally of the Scorpion Army, so I naturally just hate Seraphine. So seeing that locked in, it's definitely it itches me the wrong way. But yeah, you gotta look at these comps as a whole. You definitely have to appreciate what it does going into the composition of Winthrop, and it makes this like more of a coin flip than I've ever really felt it be. You still have a lot of early impact that can come out of Winthrop, and we've seen how much they thrive when they can get that. That being said, it can all be stopped so quickly at the wrong team fight. This is going to be a very delicate game for Winthrop to get through.
Yeah, it is kind of like an arms race, but not the arms race that we normally look at when we talk with Kelsey, right? She will often talk about how like one team tries to snowball top lane, the other team tries to snowball bottom lane, and that's a traditional thing. You're just trying to get the more fed lane to carry some of these team fights later on. But this is, as you said, very touch and go. Either the team with Jarvan, Galio, and Gnar has enough damage to just win the team fight outright, or they don't, and then they lose. So we'll see which one ends up happening because it'll be a very, very small difference between them absolutely dumpstering the team fight and them not getting it. So if they start getting like a couple Infernal Dragons or a couple of Ocean Dragons for the red team, they should be in a much better spot to try taking this fight. But until then, they are absolutely the beatdown. They need to make plays in order to find that gold lead.
And not just find the gold lead, find the win and be able to stay into the Unified Grand Prix. 1-1 apiece, this is a best of 3. Whoever wins this takes it all and continues to go on with the UGP. But if you lose here, you're out of it. So either team right now feeling that pressure, especially if you're Winthrop and you had something as catastrophic as that last call, you're having big questions about the morale of the team and the composure of their shot calling.
Yeah, we'll see. These are big questions that we need to answer, but I said at the very beginning of the day, I think Winthrop is favored to win this series, and I still, even now, even with this draft that gives me a lot of, pause, to say the least, I still think that they have been able to consistently show they are the better team, and I think that they should be able to find a lot of these victories in terms of finding objectives off on the sides.
Interesting. Cyber's still going with the Ignite Smite combo. You don't really have that much that really life gens on this one, so I don't think the Ignite is any more potent than it was before. In fact, a little bit weaker and just used as a kill tool than anything else. And
yeah. Follow Sudsy on
really
Instagram, by the way. He's posting all these selfies as we go, so.
I'm telling you, no. I ain't following her on Instagram. I ain't following her on Twitter. I ain't following her on nothing, man.
We'll see.
Champion out of my sight, Joshi. I'd rather see the Kai'Sa. I'd rather see the J4 for the king. I actually really like that champ. It was one of my favorite things to jungle back in the day when I did play this game a lot more often.
No, I love playing Jarvan top too, especially with like Grasp of the Undying, because you have this really big, satisfying auto attack every like 10 seconds where you just walk in, you hit them with the Grasp and your passive martial cadence at the same time, just do like quarter of their HP with just like one auto attack by walking up. But one thing that's important, Doxa, I think it's level 2 off of this first wave. So Sudsy needs to be very, very careful because of the way, you see he's actually level 2 now. The second wave hasn't crashed quite yet because he got the experience off of the ward kill on far side of the map, but not able to do anything just quite with it. Sudsy doing a good job backing off.
This is the Kenji Classic. He's been just aggressive. We talked about it. Miss the shots he don't take. That's Kenji right there. He goes for the engage any single time he can. And over in the top lane, I'm very interested in this Gnar versus Sion matchup because Gnar can be a pest and Sion can't match anything. It does become just a little bit of a beatdown over on that top side. Harassment, boomerangs galore going into your face.
Whew. Speeding through. All right. Yeah, hybrids, this is another situation where the lane is kind of touch and go. Like, Gnar can get a really big lead if he's able to dodge out of a lot of Sion's Qs. But if you can't, you don't have a whole lot of base armor or base HP as mini Gnar to really play with. So it's really going to be on hybrids to try and dodge a lot of these out and thereby create some advantages up against the top line of this Sion, because he needs to have advantages. He needs to have the damage necessary to blow up players like Cyber, Sudsy, and Scooped. Again, the triple S core that Revival have really been building around.
See those autos coming in. Having that grasp for hybrids works a little bit more. Just be. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Little internet problems. As you see, the grasp coming out of hybrids. Anytime he dodges that Q, he can have a pretty big punish window right there. And even if he takes a little bit of damage, grasp helps him out more than it would help out Concept of X running on just that melee champion of Sion. All that being said, though, look at Cyber going a little bit for the deep invade, wants to steal away a couple of camps and might set his targets early towards the top side.
True, but look at where Frostforest is heading. He knows that camp was up. He's probably not expecting this invade coming through, so he does need to be very careful as he walks over, realizes the Krugs are going to be gone. He'll definitely call it out, but it might be too late for hybrids.
Hybrids not playing too aggressive right here, and it's at a pretty good time. We'll be able to get under his tower. Takes a little bit of damage. It's not going to be too much, though, and we'll take the early recall on top of it. Frostforest just going to notice the scraps of his golems as he heads back into his jungle.
Yeah, do you think Hybrids is going to get another Cole this game, like he's done in both Game 1 and Game 2?
That's arrogance. That's absolute arrogance. But yeah, I pretty much do think he is.
We'll see.
You're playing Gnar, why not?
Opa, get that grass proc, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all top laners really care about. Top laners want one thing, and it's absolutely disgusting.
And not just the grass for hybrids, though. I mean, you get the 3 autos coming out of the passive of his W, I believe it is, and there you go. Bonus damage.
Yep.
You're starting to see Concept of X win these trades, though. He's getting more and more in, and hybrids is just not having the fancy feat to be able to dodge him.
Yeah, this is actually the first time that Concept of X is ahead in CS at basically any point of any game. So this is pretty darn good for them at this point, and we'll see if they can continue to push that around, because as you start getting towards level 6 and as Cyber has an opportunity to come back up, even though there's no flash burn from hybrids, there is still an opportunity for them. If you land like an E from Sion, suddenly you can convert it into a ton of damage. You can just follow it up with the ultimate while he's still crowd controlled, and that'll provide enough time for Cyber to bring enough damage. But interestingly enough, check out Concept of X's inventory. Doesn't have quite enough money to pick up a Bramble Vest, and so instead, he's grabbing himself 3 cloth armors. Wearing 3 shirts is tough.
It's really uncomfortable. But, it's winter. Sometimes it feels good then.
Oh, true. And you guys have been having a pretty tough winter down there in LA. The coldest, I heard it went down to 50 degrees.
Oh my god, it was so cold. Hey, temperature's kind of relative based on where you live, but...
For sure.
Can't fault me for that one. Meanwhile, trying to crash the wave again, Concept of X has been doing a great job of just cutting this wave to the side and being able to farm it up quite peacefully. He's keeping up with the Gnar, who is trying his best to be aggressive, but he's taking so much damage from Cyber. He takes minion aggro from time to time, and Concept has been great with his devastating smashes.
Yeah, and you're seeing Hybrid's not going with the Cole either. Instead, he's going to be just walking back to lane with this axe, which will give him, it's the old Phage passive, right? It's not the new Phage that heals you up, it's just the Phage that's going to be giving you a little bit of movement speed. But of note, he was just frozen off of pretty hard, and despite the fact that Concept of X is now pushing, he ends up losing about a wave of CS, and so you see... before it was a very limited advantage coming out for Concept of X. He's going to lose a decent amount of it, right? He's still going to be down about half a wave even after picking all of this up. And you see, Hybrid's got to be very careful. And I think he's going to lose a couple of those casters based on the HP that they're at when it ends up walking in. And it leads a very small advantage in favor of Concept of X. But hey, that is the first time that it's not a disadvantage. So hey, this is progress.
I mean, hybrids being on the Gnar, you have a very small window before Scion's able to get his entire kit online to get that harassment. I was hoping to see a little bit more of it, but hybrids not able to abuse that enough, and now you have the point where Scion is just looking to wave clear and leave as we take a bit of a detour over to the alcove. And wave's going to crash, going to take the teleport on meanwhile, and not see too much else here. It's going to be a very slow early game as opposed to game 1 and 2 that we saw from before.
Yeah, a very, very small goal differences between the teams at this point. I mean, again, Winthrop is the first one. I don't want to say again, because last time it was Revival on the red side to pick up the first dragon, but Winthrop now picking up the first Cloud Dragon for himself, and Kenji's here.
Ooh, a nice sleepy trouble bubble, looking to bring in the paddle star. The damage is there, and first blood is found, going into the pocket of Kenji this time.
Wow, that was really good from Sasuke, just to throw down the traps knowing they don't arm before the damage is going to be coming through from Doxa, which means that he's going to be trapped immediately after coming out of the damage and securing them to this kill. Kugiyama not yet level 6, doesn't have the Unbreakable Will to break crowd control, and the first kill goes over to the Galio, so not the biggest thing in the world, but it is going to mean that with one fewer member on the top half of the map, this rotation coming out from Revival doesn't net them anything, as the Rift Herald is just picked up for the side of Winthrop. Nice.
So an early advantage to come, but look at this over on the top side. Hybrids wants to take it to Concept of X, a flash forward,
Nice.
throw one more boulder, and he gets the kill. Hybrids finally able to find that 1v1 after the lane swap, but look over at this top side. There's a lot of attention coming out from both squads.
Yeah, knowing that there's not a play on the opposite side of the map means that they can be a little bit more aggressive, but cooldowns on the death timers are not long enough just quite yet. Concept of X would be up in time, try and teleport to the play. So wisely, Winthrop going to be backing off. But it looks like we're going to get a replay of the fight in the bottom lane, I imagine, is Hybrids is going to be picking it up. Oh no, it's just going to be is Alistair dying. And honestly, again, I just want to praise Sasuke for his usage of these traps here, because they don't arm before the damage comes through. He just gets trapped immediately after coming out and is dead. So very clean play coming out overall, and a very good set coming through is nice. What options are we looking for?
Hey man, if I'm at a PC bong, I'm usually looking at the options throughout the entire game to finally find my resolution back to the perfect one.
Oh, yeah, gotta make sure it's borderless window, right?
That all being said, though, it's a great early start to come out of Winthrop. They are only ahead about 500 gold, but it's still momentum nonetheless. And you're taking momentum away from Revival, which is, in the early game, a little bit of a bigger deal. Stopping their CS, stopping them from getting those early items means a lot for those early objective fights.
Yeah, and we'll see how it ends up shaking out, because the team fight timer is almost done. We got 50 seconds left until the next dragon is going to be coming up, which means that we're going to be paying attention to what items people have completed. Notably, Sudsy, as a sole magic damage member of their team, is actually going to be opting into picking up the Moonstone Renewer, right? So he's going to have a little bit more healing, but is not necessarily going to be doing the same kind of damage as if he had gone with something like Villiandre's, which is not a bad decision, but it does mean that it puts a little bit more pressure on players like Cyber and Scooped to be doing the damage throughout these fights. But because it's so cheap, Sudsy has his mythic completed before this dragon actually spawns, whereas nobody on Winthrop has yet completed their first item, and therefore will be a little bit weaker as they start looking towards this dragon. And so if Revival come to contest, Winthrop might have to back away.
It might have to, but Cyber, you also have to keep in mind that he has opted into that Ignite Smite build, and he hasn't really done much with it. He hasn't picked up anything kill-wise. Tempo-wise, he's doing great, of course. Definitely outpacing Jarvan, but that's to be expected in the Graves versus J4 matchup. But otherwise, you're not seeing his impact on the map too potently. It's just been a counter-jungling spree. We definitely need to see more if this Graves is going to be effective with taking that summoner spell, because once we get to a teamfight phase, you want Flash. You desperately want Flash. And speaking of Flash, there goes one bird in the mid lane.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't opt into diving, but this is a good soul coming out with the Cloud and the Mountain Dragon already in the hands of Winthrop. Means that they can look for fights, but... Oh, that's Signal. Run, boy, run!
Dinner bell gets rang, but Unfortunately, Mom didn't prep it at the table just yet. Now the engage on the Frost Forest, but the hero's entrance comes through. Kenshi going to join the fight, tries to find the double. He will get it, as well as the charge onto Sudsy, but it's going to be Concept of X running critically low as Dox is able to take him down. Now here comes Hybrids trying to find Scoop, gets the damage onto him, but there's the interference run by Sudsy. It's not enough to save Scoop's life. Hybrid will get another kill, and Winthrop are gonna pick up 4 unanswered kills in this matchup. 12 minutes in, they're sieging the mid lane tower.
Oh, Doxa might be caught.
Yeah, trying to find Doxa now. The knockup goes through, but the flash coming out is gonna force the flash out of Kuga, and the siege to continue in the mid lane with Shelly there to help out. Few more turret shots to go through, but still mid lane priority goes over to Winthrop, and so does early game control.
Yeah, man for man, Winthrop are stronger at this point in the game, and we saw the effects of that play out right there. Boom, game was bang on even. Suddenly, 2,500 gold lead going in favor of Winthrop, and that's what they need, right? They need these leads so that these team fights are going to be going in their favor, because they have some split push fallback that they can look at, right? Hybrids is going to be in a spot where he can play in these long lanes up against Concept of X, but you got to be able to take at least one team fight, right? You have to find one, because your opponents are going to fight into their Nexus turrets, whether you want to fight them or not.
So now Revival really trying to find a way to get into this match. It's not looking too promising in this early game. The gold lead is starting to add up for Winthrop, and with that last win, it did boom their gold lead quite a bit. We still have 2 minutes and 50 seconds before we get the next Drake on the map, so not really much to do there. It does buy Revival a bit of breathing room to try and set up potentially something for this map, and that's what they're doing right here as they go straight after Kenshi. Able to lick the stun onto Kenshi, but Kenshi is a big boy. He's a big tanky golem and will be able to get away. However, same cannot be said for the cow as Kuga gets slain and made into a burger. It's looking beautiful for Winthrop. They might be celebrating very, very soon.
Yeah, so far, again, trying to find a play onto one of the tankiest members of Winthrop means that Revival don't have the cooldowns left to actually take the fight afterwards. And Saskio, he doesn't have any kills, but he's got his item completed. The Kraken Slayer going to be doing a lot of damage. And we're starting to see why does Zoe is actually a reasonable counter pick to Sudsy, right? It doesn't matter how much healing you're going to be doing if you're just going to be killing somebody 100 to 0 without a whole lot of counterplay through it. So Doxa going to be doing a lot more work as this game continues to go on, because he's been finding some fantastic sleeps to set up for these little bit of picks.
That's a funny way to put it. Can't heal him if the damage is 100% of the health bar. Smart pick to come out of Dox, and he's going to continue putting on this pressure. Look at how close that mid lane tower is to falling. Sudsy is doing everything he can to stop the autos to come in from the minions, but it's going to be a nice little ult coming out of Doxa to get that final auto in. And with that, mid lane turret goes down. The Jewel of the Rift falls. Now it's time to start putting in that deep vision.
Jewel of the Rift, mid turret. We'll come back to that. We'll have to have this conversation later, because right now, again, we're going to have to see how Winthrop want to set up. Once again, Dinner Bell coming close. We got about a minute until the Ocean Dragon is going to be spawning, and at this point, Revival have full items on almost all of their members. This means that as this dragon comes up, they should be stronger, and they're already looking to leverage that by coming down to push Concept of X away. Because if they find a kill before this dragon spawns, it's going to put them one dragon away from Ocean Soul, and I don't think I need to remind the viewers how impactful that is, right? It's going to heal you so much throughout these entire team fights that going up against these double marksmen with your engage comp suddenly becomes plausible.
Now Revival coming out here to try and put some contention over towards that Drake you were just talking about. You're not seeing as much on the side of Winthrop. You need to get Hybrids down there quite soon. He's going to be there, and he will not have Meganar for this next fight. Doesn't have teleport, so is going to take the long road. Sleepy Trouble Bubble will go wide. So does the Decimating Smash as Kenshi tries to get some damage in of his own, but you can see that the focus is there. Both of these teams know how important this Drake is, and all 5 strong is going to be Revival, but you can see the poke damage, you can see the chip damage. A knockup comes through, it's going to find its way on the Frost Forest, who has to flag and drag on out. The Dinner Bell is rang. Saskio's trying to run out. Here comes the hero's entrant. Will find the knockup and defend Saskio, who's left unchecked, making those rockets come in. He has now gotten excited. Revival are not low enough, though. Killer Instinct comes out. Frost Forest looking to jump in. Over the wall with the Blast Plant comes Saskio, who's looking to find Sudsy. Unable to get it just yet as a 1-for-1 trade goes in that last bit of the fight. Ultimately going to round this out to a 2 for 3 in favor of Winthrop once again, but Revival are not done. Cyber starts to go forward, and so does Genji, who wants to get that taunt, and he will score it. Flag and Drag comes out, able to get more damage on. Still, the Golem does fall. You want to find Sudsy, you're gonna lose Frost Forest in the process. The slow is there, and Saskio can't get close enough. He's spent too much time trying to handle that, and this has bought Concept of X time to join this fight. He walks onto a trap. Saskio's trying to find his way out of this, but it's going to be very, very tricky when he got one more smash coming through, and Concept of X will grab the kill. Revival fighting tooth and nail to stay in this tournament.
Yeah, this game actually suddenly looks really, really close. You're not going to have Saskio up in time for this impending second dragon fight, which means that Revival should be able to pick it up if it is the objective that they want to go for. I mean, we didn't get to see hybrids, but we might get to see a replay later on. And now, it should be an easy pickup for Revival, slowing down Winthrop's opportunity to look for these massive fights. But they have their combo available. Here comes hybrids.
Winthrop is returning. Revival hasn't taken this Drake yet, so another team fight to come. The knock-up Flag and Drake with the Cataclysm onto Scoop eliminates him from this game. But there is the knock-up, and there is the Seraphine. Able to get some damage onto the back line, and it's going to be a jungler traded. Still going through hybrids, trying to get his damage in and trying to get Winthrop back into this matchup. But Kuga playing defense, being able to get that crowd control onto Winthrop is going to dissuade Winthrop from being able to outright take this fight. Still, though, Winthrop have found 2, and Revival have only found 1. It's going to be a 3-on-3 fight. You still have one more member in the mid lane, Saskio, over the wall. Doxa trying to find those paddle stars, but Revival are stalling this out very, very slowly. You're not going to have your ADC scooped if you go for this fight, and Revival are going to choose to back off instead, and they might just outright concede this dragon over to Winthrop, which is going to put Soul Point over to Winthrop.
Oh, man, I was not expecting that to be how this all shook out, Eric. This is going to be a tough position for Winthrop to try and turn things around. But look at how decisive Winthrop are in this whole fight. And I really want to praise Saskio for staying alive for as long as he did. Right, he's able to withstand the initial engage by dodging out from Concept of X, and then by buying enough space, he's able to get enough time to keep himself alive and find some fights. But on the opposite side of the map, just watch the fact that Hybrids doesn't get to participate in this fight whatsoever. He just instantly dies. Doxa standing right next to him doesn't get to do anything, and suddenly this backline trade that you were initially looking at with killing a bunch of 80 carries turns into this all-out brawl. And Saskio almost turns this around, but Cyber, you know, doesn't have flash, but he does have damage. Is able to find a couple of kills onto multiple members, which allows the side of Revival to still have enough members alive in order to turn things around and not give up the Ocean Dragon on the first fight.
This part right here just feels so bad. Saskio almost having it, doesn't get the kill, and gets killed.
Yeah. It's all right, ADCs. This is good for the game. This is healthy. This is how the game is supposed to be played. If your champion could 1v1 that Sion with like half your HP, then like there's something else deeply wrong with the game. So I'm excited. This is a good replay. I can't wait to see Sion crash another wave. Thank you.
But now you're starting to see a little bit of eyes wandering towards that Baron. Winthrop are starting to establish some vision over towards that area. They got it on the ramp. Battlestar only going to hit a minion as Winthrop trying to defend this tower. A flash forward. Hex flash forward coming out of Kuga. But minion wave will be cleared. Revival are trying very desperately to set up the siege, but they're having a very hard time getting past the defenses of Winthrop.
Yeah, there is okay wave clear on the side of Winthrop. They just, I don't.
Oh, I didn't know it interacts like that, but Concept of X is going to look to take this engagement. Fortunately, the smash gets interrupted right there, and here comes the Cataclysm onto the back line. It's going to be the J4 that falls before the hero's entrance is even used, and now Kenji will follow his jungler. The heroes exit right on out of there. Revival see the Baron, and that is what they want.
I don't know why they went for that. They might end up losing the Baron here. They still have 3 members, so they can try and contest, but they're going to be very healthy. There's a Moonstone Seraphine already.
Ooh, out comes the Paddle Stars. A lot of damage coming out from the
Oh
Baron,
my
and it's going to
God.
be 1 kill picked up. Kuga
Oh
falls,
my
and so
God.
does Concept of X. Doxa able to find it as well as Saskio, and now Revival, they started the Baron. It was all a mistake. They're losing the advantage. They just gained.
God, okay, this is why when you're playing League of Legends as a team, you need to make the call. Are we trying to hit this Baron with the intention of killing it? Are we hitting this Baron with the intention of drawing people over to fight? And this was definitely a situation where you couldn't realistically do either. You couldn't try and burn it up against the Zoe and the Gnar and the Jinx. You couldn't try and turn on them because you don't have any engage tools left. You can't hit the Baron in that situation. You need to be able to do one or the other. And ideally, you need to be able to threaten to do both. In this case, you just give Winthrop a ton of time to bring people back on, wait for this next dragon to go, and then you can coin flip the next 4 dragons in a row in order to try and find them. And they're not even coin flips. You should be able to win these pretty consistently with the gold lead that you've been able to accrue so far.
What a crazy match we've been having thus far. I mean, taking a look at the gold standings itself, about 4K separating, talking about that gold lead you were mentioning just a second ago, 23 minutes in, it's already sole point for Winthrop. And Revival, they can't seem to catch a break, man. I feel it. I feel for them. I feel for them in this state because these fights get so long and drawn out. They are exhausting to go through, especially when you come out with the defeat at the very end of it. But Revival looking poised, still set up a siege to still get some vision control because we talked about Soul Point earlier. It's coming up in just 35 seconds. We will have a Dragon Soul.
All right, Jinx not going to have the second item, not going to have access to the Runaan's Hurricane for these fights, but they do have a QSS. So they can keep themselves alive. And again, this Jinx is kind of tacked on as the extra threat on the other side in order to do enough damage while the rest of the team is trying to deal with the front line. But we've got to pay attention to how effectively, 1, Doxa can do this damage, and 2, how effectively they're able to coordinate their ultimates. Because if they can blow it out with a huge ultimate from Frost Forest, it doesn't matter if you can take a sustained fight if you aren't going to have an opportunity to sustain through it.
Frost Forest trying to be the lead here. The last time we saw that, they tried to do the Heroes Cataclysm combo, and it did not work out because Frost Forest just died way too fast. But Kuga's going to go in, and there we go, looking for the engage. Health bars are starting to get low. Frost Forest on the back line. Here comes the Hero's entrance, still going to flag right through and kill the Seraphine. Cyber will follow him, and now Winthrop are just tearing through Revival. Hybrids looking to hunt down Scoop, but Scoop, you're going to walk right into Frost Forest. It's going to be kill after kill after kill. It's going to find the ace. Over for Winthrop, you want anything, it's gonna be a buffet. Dragon Soul over on the bot side, Baron over on the top side. Winthrop are looking to win this game, Joshi.
It's all you can eat in this game. They don't lose a single member, and they perform that team fight excellently, and now they're gonna be picking up everything. Ocean Soul, Baron buff, 8,000 gold lead at this point. They should be comfortable to try and end this game rather cleanly from this point on. In Revival, their options are starting to run really, really thin. They tried to find a flank, but it wasn't enough. And now they're relying on mistakes coming out from Winthrop so that the game doesn't end by the time this Elder Dragon spawns. And hopefully you can take a coin flip by getting Cyber over the wall.
This is a very, very deadly state. We usually think of the 10k gold lead as the way too hard to come back from level. I mean, we've seen comebacks from that, but with the composition of Revival and some of the prowess we're seeing out of Winthrop, especially knowing that they can get a good amount of poke in before they just try hard that engage, it's looking very, very grim for them. They just don't have the itemization, and it feels like they're really on their last limb right here as they try and set up this defense, putting a vision ward after ward in their jungle, only to have it swept away over the raw power and control we're seeing as Winthrop.
Yeah, I just got to praise Doxa. You see the numbers coming up on your screen. Did the most damage in that last team fight, partly because he was able to get like a double paddle star onto multiple backlines. Sudsy and Cyber took a ton of damage before the fight even started. Now, as they stand out of range of the turrets, they just got to wait for these cannon minions to come in and do the dirty work for them. Buy time for Doxa to start using these Sleepy Trouble Bubbles across the entire side. And if he can start finding them, a siege can end very, very quickly. It just needs to kill one person.
Now the siege starts up in the mid lane. Winthrop to try and take an inhibitor tower, but it's very difficult for them. We talked about this problem before, not having enough range. You do have a lot of defenders this time. The trick here is trying to keep your minion waves alive so Jinx can get close enough, at least reasonably safety, to be able to wail away on these turrets. And it's one thing Revival really got going for them. They do have that wave clear, and they do have the threat of a very, very vicious counter engage if you do go for a tower dive.
Yeah, and you're seeing Sasuke can't even walk in. He can't really touch these turrets because, as you say, the Seraphine ultimate is always available. You can't walk into Kugiyama or Concept of X. And they are starting to get a couple of turrets. They get 2 turrets outside of the base, but Hybrid's got to run away while the rest of his team moves down to the opposite side of the map and picks up another structure for themselves. But, Eric, I don't think this is enough. I don't think that they're going to be able to crack the base with this Baron buff. They have this wave left, and after that, they're going to have to wait for another objective unless they're willing to dive right here, right now.
Trying to find that paddle star sets, he just barely slips away. And yeah, I have to echo your sentiment right there. I don't think it's going to be enough to crack the base, but the Elder Dragon is definitely going to look pretty juicy in the next 3 minutes if they do want to go for it. The waves are starting to build up. You do got a 1-4 push coming in and a lot of harassment to come in as well underneath the tower, but you're going to need a lot more of that. You're going to need a Costco package of that if you are going to set up a dive onto this comp.
Yeah, okay. I really, really don't like when teams are playing for Elder Dragon as a win condition, because at this point in the game, even though you're up 10,000 gold, even though you have the Ocean Soul, if the other team gets the Elder Dragon, suddenly they have a way back into the game. And currently, Frost Forest is down a level, so it's a little bit harder for him to actually win these smite fights. Cyber has the Immortal Shield bow, so he's going to be a little bit healthier and can stand in the pit a little bit longer than a lot of other junglers could. He has a dash to get over the wall in his kit, so you have to be very proactive. You can't really hit this Elder Dragon unless Cyber is dead, and that is going to be very difficult for them to do, because you notice they didn't get a single kill during that entire Baron power play.
No kills to be had as the gold lead continues to grow. Still staying around that 10k area. This is where Revival have kind of plateaued the gold lead, but it's definitely not optimal. It's still a lot to come back from. And when some of your early game selections like this Graves have fallen off and don't have flash, it's so deadly to find and engage back onto Winthrop.
Yeah, we'll see what they can do. Again, we're looking at a situation where the front line of Winthrop is just so much stronger at this point in the game. They are, they have a lot more tanky stats. They can face check things, whereas Concept of X and Kugiyama, Sion looks tanky because he's got a ton of HP, but he actually gets shredded rather quickly by all the damage that Winthrop is able to put out. And if he gets crowd controlled, you'll see him melt almost instantly. But we'll see. They're trying to push things up. We got 50 seconds until the Elder Dragon actually spawns. And if Revival can find a good fight between now and then, if they can pick hybrids or something else like that, this game is surprisingly tense, giving all that. But no, Frostfire's trying to flank.
And here we go. Frostfire goes in. Here comes the hero's entrance as well, trying to find Sudsy. Sudsy stays alive. Now jumping for the backline, able to get the Justice Punch onto Cyber. Cyber runs critically low as well. 2 people with low health bars. Meanwhile, Frost Forest is the only one low on the side of Winthrop. Nice. But now the first kill goes through. It's time to get excited if you're Saskio, because you're looking at these health bars and you are salivating on the kills you can pick up. There comes another one. And Winthrop, they're going to eviscerate Revival as they take down 4 members unanswered. It's going to be number 5. Saskio grabs it for the clean ace, and Winthrop have done it. They will eliminate Revival from the play-ins 31 minutes into this game. A 2-1 series coming out of Winthrop.
Oh man, Frost Forest engage at the very end was so good. It makes up for the terrible play of game 2, because he knew he just needed to get that fight started, and that is exactly what he did. So congratulations to Winthrop on figuring out the mistakes. They were ahead in game 1. They had a lead in game 2 until they had a disastrous decision. And in game 3, while it was a little bit more tense than I would have necessarily expected, there was never a serious doubt that they were ever going to lose this game. So good job. That's exactly what I like to see. You take a bad game and turn it around into such a clean example of execution coming through. So just got to give mad props to all the guys on the throw.
Yeah, you definitely got to give them props. Even going into the Seraphine pick, we were very, very skittish about that. Once we saw the Seraphine locked in, we're like, oh, you have a forward comp? Seraphine loves dealing with that. And that's why a lot of my worries did revolve around the Siege. Even though, like, you did have that 10k gold lead coming out of Winthrop, they couldn't really find a good setup for that tower dive. They couldn't really find too much for the longest time, just letting the game draw out. That being said, though, it still stayed in the 10k area. It still persisted like that, and eventually something's got to give. It did. Winthrop found it, and they found the wind off of it. It was an intense competitive series, but overall, hats off to them. Congratulations on your victory.
Yeah, and I want to especially highlight a couple of members throughout this because they all did a lot of work, right? Doxa looked really, really good on every single champion he played in this series today. Even the Orianna that wasn't quite as loud of a carry, he was able to be super, super impactful. And the Zoe, his ability to pressure out members of the other team through rather consistently without presenting serious threat to himself looked fantastic, and I can't wait to see what this guy is going to be doing as one of the bright spots, I think, for Winthrop as they're starting to look towards the rest of the Unified Grand Prix.
I mean, that's Zoe. It ended with a scoreline of 5-1-9. That was spicy, but you know what was even spicier? You were talking about at the start, Frostfire. Frostfire threw caution to the wind, said, never mind, you've done enough on that poke. It is time for me to go in with that Cataclysm Hero's Entrance. The first time we saw it, I was scared right away because Frostfire got deleted. And then you just see the Galio by himself, and it's like, well, guess I die. But anything in the future, once they were able to get those items, that combo actually started to come online and work just because Frostfire didn't care what danger he was in. He just wanted his team to win.
Yeah, Frost Forest's ability to play for the rest of the team was really, really impressive. And, I think that's something that, is an obvious point for them to continue coordinating on, is making sure that they are lining up their ultimates. Because as every single time Frost Forest used the Cataclysm, they were able to get things set up almost immediately from one of the players, but not necessarily both of them. And, I don't want to criticize them too much in their victory, but they also have to remember that they are not done. This is only their first game. They're going to be going up against TSM Academy as the #1 seed going into this tournament next. And, as the number 9 seed going through, it's tough going up against the #1 seed right off the bat. But that's how brackets work. You're now in the double elimination part, so you still have opportunities to try and make it towards the top 4.
But Joshi, it's TSM Academy. I don't know if you remember, but a few seasons back, we saw Sven all by himself get annihilated on the main roster of TSM. Winthrop just did the whole Olaf play, which was, that's a classic textbook TSM. This is going to be a competitive matchup, Joshi. This is going to be who can throw harder. No, I'm just joking. It's definitely going to be a pretty intense matchup to see. I'm excited for that one because I think Winthrop can bring a lot. They've shown that, they're not afraid to sway away from the meta, to take something like the J4 and to give away something like the Seraphine and still be able to take it down. I have high hopes for Winthrop in their ability to proceed in this tournament, but it's still TSM Academy at the end of the day. It's a tall task.
Yeah, I want to give a couple of updates to some of our viewers who might have only watched this series today. So obviously Winthrop take down Revival 2-1, but Cloud9 Amateur take down Barrage, one of the #1 teams we were looking at so far to potentially make it 2 Proving Grounds at the end. Zeus Gaming take down Supernova, and notably, we had another major upset as Maryville take down Evil Genius's Prodigies 2-0. So, we have a very exciting tournament. A couple of major teams that we were expecting to do very well here suddenly knocked out in the first round, and we're not going to see them any further.
Joshi, it's the Proving Grounds. This is what we talked about. Teams wanted to put the money where the mouth is, and they are doing it. I want to see more of it, that's for sure, and we will definitely see more of it as we do proceed more in this tournament. But we are going to throw it over to a short break. When we return, we'll have an interview with Hybrids as our boy Rafa will take over the desk.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and we got Hybrids, the winning top laner from tonight's series against Revival. First of all, congratulations, my friend. Great Aatrox and Gnar gameplay. The first question I want to ask you is, what was your prep like with Winthrop University going into tonight's matchup against Revival today? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we saw how well that worked out for you. Even in the game that you did lose, you got solo kills down onto Concept of X in pretty much across all games. There's a note mentioned that Aatrox is definitely one of your favorite champions. So when you busted out the Gnar, we were questioning whether you're going to be able to have that same type of performance. But you had massive flanks, you had massive team fight engage with the Gnar being able to follow up, and now that you guys are done with Revival, your next opponent is up against TSM Academy, and you're going to be going up against Hanser, someone whose pedigree speaks for itself. How are you feeling and looking to prepare against him and the rest of the TSM Academy squad?
I'm gonna be honest. We're not really sure right now. We're still processing the win. Like we're taking wins one by one. So right now I'm just gonna take relax, and then tomorrow when I wake up, I'm just gonna be talking with coaches, try to prep. Just be ready. Have a draft ready for tomorrow.
All right. Well, it sounds like you just need to get a good night's sleep and then be on top of your game starting tomorrow morning. So if that's the case, Hybrids, I'm going to let you go. But before you go, I want to give you the opportunity to shout yourself out, plug any social medias, and then shout out any fans and friends that you want to give thanks to after your victory today.
All right. I'd like to shout. So for my social media, it's at lolhybrids on Twitter. I don't think I have another one, but for shoutouts, I'd like to shout out my team. I think Chad really popped up this game. I think Doxa also just always gap Sudzi. Our bot lane, as always, like Sasuke Keiji, what do you want to expect from them? They're just hard smash. I want to give a big shout out to Matt. He was really good with the draft. We were ready for everything, so good shout out to him. Cake also, he just for scrims, he's simple and all. I'd like to shout out Josh too, our manager. He's always there for games. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Hybrids, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much, and congratulations again. Best of luck in your match tomorrow, Hybrids.
Thank you.
All right, and welcome back to the desk, Alk and Kelsey. That was our interview with Hybrids. First, he was very confident on their prep against Revival, and you spoke or you saw how he mentioned that Concept had nothing on him, and we clearly saw how those results came down to Alk. As every time he got a solo kill, he had an advantage that he was able to run away with.
We saw him get that solo kill, right? And after that, it was kind of just over. And we were looking at this as, hey, can Concept of X really match up so far in this matchup? And you brought it up on the interview that we were really praising Hybrid's Aatrox. We were kind of waiting to see what he looks like on other champions. But, this right here is maybe not about Hybrids. This is more about, this mid-control that we were looking at for Winthrop, because they took absolute control finally with this Zoe, making sure that they're able to get this, and really great job from Saskia. This is one of the best parts we were looking at for Winthrop, was the rotation over to Rift Herald on a pretty great timer. We also saw that Revival were there, but sadly, because Plux ends up going down there, it means that they don't have access to this area of the Rift.
Honestly, yeah, I was expecting to see more like that just because of how much control that Winthrop in general should have had. Based on You have the Seraphine, you have the Alistar in the bot lane. There's not a whole lot you could do. I expected dive plays to be set up with Jarvan on either mid or the bottom side, but we didn't really see that. I think potentially a factor of that was Plux in terms of his positioning being very good at not showing on vision. But eventually you see Winthrop kind of adapt, able to get deeper vision in the jungle. I do think we have a small heat map of Plux's play, if it can be shown on stream. But
just put
in
it
general,
over my face. Here we go.
Just put it over your face.
To essentially set you up here, Kelsey, is that for the early part of the game was a little slow for both teams, and one of the things that Plux did do really well for the side of Revival is a certain position that he maintained at one point in the game, where it made it really scary for here
There
we
it
go.
is.
Thank you, producer Tone. As Kelsey, you can
Nice.
point out that it's not the giant red circle, but it's that green
The
circle
tiny
near the
green
bottom.
one, yeah.
Yeah, bottom jungle quadrant.
In general, if your support is hanging around mid as much as that, just not showing anywhere, you would expect for a Jarvan with Prio on both mid and bot to look for an insta dive. But because they weren't quite sure where Plux was and he could come in with the Alistair counterflank, they seemed really, really hesitant to accelerate the game there. So I wouldn't say it was great positioning or great macro from Plux, but it definitely did have an impact on the early game and Revival's ability to stay in it for a little while.
Yeah, for it stalled out the game, and then that was definitely enough for the rest of Winthrop to not be able to get anything done, and something that always gets us a little concerned is when you are playing a champion like Jarvan, if you're not able to get any early ganks off and get agency for then this Graves will begin to outpace you. But that wasn't the case. As we started seeing some dragon fights start rolling in, and every single time, Winthrop just always had the better setup, and that all really came off of the back that not only hybrids and Doxa were up in terms of CS, but also just had particular lane advantages. And especially when Sudsy is put on Seraphine, this is a champion that you want to kind of wait on for the 15-20 minute mark so that you can start hitting your Moonstone Renewer and your Staff of Flowing Water spikes. But, every time that Revival opted into those fights, they weren't quite ready yet, as we see this first mid-fight around the Dragon Pit.
You say all these things about Seraphine, but Sudsy just really dropped the ball when it came to there wasn't much for this mid jungle to do. Thankfully for him, on the other side, it seemed like Winthrop and Doxa, like Kelsey had mentioned, were just off sync. This ultimate goes a little bit wide, and this is basically most of the tone for this game. It is kind of just like we're fighting, and the biggest thing in almost every single one of these is look at Hybrid's positioning. Every single time it is always trying to stop Scooped from entering the fight. He's always pressuring onto the enemy any carry, and we'll see that later on when we get a few more clips. But I think that is the biggest thing for Winthrop, is their top laner just making sure to pressure the backline of Revival, making sure that it was always uneven and their damage was never really able to come up.
We also had some pretty good zoning from Sirkedji in that. He was someone we definitely highlighted in the pregame. So a lot of good little individual plays and moments from Winthrop this game, even if it didn't feel like the fights were always completely coordinated.
Yeah, the second Dragon fight, we see that, where Winthrop thrive in scattering the members of Revival, that this is supposed to be a death ball composition. You have the Seraphine being able to empower Graves and this Kaisa here, but when everyone is not able to get access to Saskia, who is sitting untouched in the jungle because there's so much space being bought by Frost Force and Sirkenji, Saskia gets the free hit on everyone, and then the backline for Revival begin to go by the wayside here, as we just see it time and time again here, Alk Battery.
I was gonna say this whole game is basically just microcosms of gameplay. They're playing individually really well, but it's that team play that is not quite syncing up. As this fight actually just goes on forever. We even have a TP eventually coming back in. Saskia dies, and then Dragon still ends up going to Winthrop. Individually, I think some of the members, or most of the members of Winthrop, are performing at a really great level, but they are not syncing up, and we see those kinds of mismanagements of some cooldowns. They're not tracking some summoner spells, and it just ends up leading to a game where Revival get to stay in the game a little bit longer than maybe we would have expected, and they get to basically just buy time in the game, keep buying more items, keep trying to get to that point where, hey, maybe Cyber is available and to try and carry this game with Scooped, but it never really hit that time, and eventually we saw Winthrop take it over.
There were also some interesting moments from Frostfire. We also see he's really willing to die for his Jinx in almost every instance. Also, you see both this game and the first game, you have the 1-2 Jinx, Jarvan, and when that happens, the jungler Jinx is saying, I can't play. What if they pick Jarvan? And then he says, okay, fine. I'll just blind it for you, bro. And we see him just constantly trying to make space, make sure that Jinx is never positioned on, trying to go for the backline carries so that Jinx just has so much free space to hit the front line and slowly work through them.
Yeah, sometimes in fights, he creates space by deflecting enemy aggression. In other cases, he initiates the fights, and the space is created because everyone in Revival is like, holy crap, they got access to our Seraphine or our Kaisa, we must defend. And then everyone forgets about Saskia on the Jinx, and then he just gets to run rampant through these fights. And something that we haven't mentioned, even though a lot of these fights seem to flip back and forth in either Revival's favor or Winthrop's favor, as there's small micro advantages that get gained either way, the overall advantage does go eventually to Winthrop because they're the ones that are picking up the dragons, and it turned out to be an Ocean Soul game. So even though the next fight isn't quite yet for the Ocean Soul, this one was an opportunity where I love my boy Frost Force. He's repping Utah, but this was a Utah engage where you're going in with your Jinx is on the top side of the map. He's not there. I don't know if in comms, Winthrop were just super confident that, hey, this is a really good fight. And it's like, wait, but we don't really have our damage here. But it's okay because
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, Doxa saves everything here, Dimitri.
Yeah, it literally doesn't matter. Zoe has so much poke. There's not many ways for Revival to... They have two options here. They have a couple. They can either try to go for a re-engage, but all of their tools are gone. At this point, they have to just retreat. I think the Baron was really greedy, especially with not too many ways to try and shut down Dox, to try to lock this champion down. And eventually, they just get chased out of the Baron pit. And after this, we see yet again where they get access to mid lane. Revival has to take a really long route. Jinx is able to free fire on some more structures, and Doxa yet again came up pretty large. I'm looking forward to see how Winthrop are actually able to activate this mid laner for them, because TSM Academy is going to be a pretty good matchup against them.
It's an interesting matchup for sure. I don't know how crazy the matchup is. I do think that Sword, for example, has been struggling a bit. So if Winthrop are able to utilize and really unlock Doxa, that's actually a really interesting matchup for amateur fans to see if you're rooting for, I guess, quote unquote, the underdogs in this scenario. So I think that that's an advantage that they can definitely parlay into their match going against TSM Academy.
And this last fight is the one that eventually secures the Ocean Soul. Even though there's a couple more fights that happened after this, at this point of the game, it is just incredibly hard for Revival to even compete with Winthrop because you have Ocean Soul, so you're boasting enough healing that matches the power that Seraphine is supposed to bring in this composition for Revival here on the flip side. And then they pick up Baron, and they eventually just Death Ball and walk into your base for free. And so now
Warriors, they just come in. We have 10,000 gold. You can't face us at this point. You just walk away.
Yeah, they get to flex their wallets and the big items that they got to spend on. But, looking forward now into this matchup with TSM Academy and Winthrop University, I do want to kind of remind everyone of the other matches that happened today, as we did see... actually, you know what? We got one more fight.
It's okay. Look,
we are playing all the hits here. We got a hammer and hope. This time, the Utah engage was actually sick from Frost Force, by the way, because it synced up well with Sir Kenji's hero's entrance. So being able to chunk out Cyber and Sudsy was super cool. But I do want to ask...
Also just coming from over the wall with the pink wards and vision, basically they didn't seem to expect that angle at all. So I really got to rep Frostfire as probably the best play that he made the entire series. So.
Yeah. Also, hybrids with the Flash Gnar ultimate was really sick. If you're a Gnar enthusiast, that's a banger right there. That's the one where you want to pull off in your solo queue adventures. But I want to ask to see if we can get a bracket graphic once again. It probably isn't
just
updated.
Show mine. It was obviously 100% correct.
No.
We got the Revival going through,
you know what? As long as they don't show mine, that's completely fine. If they show yours, I'm cool with that, because I think I only got one right out of the matches today, which is really
don't worry, so did I.
High five, brother. We got one right. Bam.
There you go.
Nice.
Oh,
all right. But, to review all the matches that did happen today in the play-in stages, we had Revival lose against Winthrop. So Winthrop will be moving on to take on TSM Academy tomorrow. Barrage did eventually lose to C9 Amateur, who will be taking on Sola Fide. Supernova lose against Zeus Gaming. So Zeus Gaming will be taking on CLG Academy. And then Maryvolt were the victors of that matchup, and they'll be facing No Orc tomorrow. And so getting a preview of those matchups, I want to start with you, Kelsey. I think the most exciting or the most interesting matchup, it would have to be this CLG Academy and Zeus Gaming matchup, because when we look across the other board, we might argue that all the other ones should go towards No Orc, Solifade, and TSM Academy respectively, but CLG Academy and Zeus Gaming might be one where it's going to be, potentially really close here.
I don't necessarily think that it's. I actually do kind of favor Zeus at this one, just because of the general experience in Alarim coming in. He knows the academy well. CLG Academy have definitely been struggling. They've lost some of their strongest pillars, so to speak, in terms of the players that were doing a lot of damage in these effective fights. Poe Belter, everyone who follows amateur loves Team Luke, right? So these types of players have fallen away, and I think CLG in general have struggled a bit more to find an identity in the wake of so many roster changes, a lot of issues in terms of visa requirements, everything else. So I actually think that this is fairly Zeus favored, just in terms of how Zeus have been playing. They seem to really understand how they want to win the game. I will give a slight edge to, the boy Hooks coming in. I think Pocket Rhino's been struggling. There's a lot of early game proactivity that could come out of him, but in general, I think that Zeus is probably going to walk away with this one.
That was one of the biggest strengths that we had given over to Evil Genius's Prodigies before, which is that as Zenith, they got to play as a team together before a lot of other teams did. Before, they were all able to play as five, so they had a lot of experience coming into Proving Grounds, and CLG are on their 11th player playing on this roster. At this point, the rosters they're getting jumbled up. It's going to be really interesting, I think, to see how the Academy... This will be one of our first kind of forays into seeing how other Academy teams, because we got to see how Golden Guardians kind of stacked up in Cup, and this time we get to see more and more of these teams play against our amateur little boys, and I think it's going to be very fun. I have my eyes on that Winthrop matchup. I know a lot of us are like, I even predicted that TSM are going to end up winning that one, but I am... As a TSM fan, I gotta rep the boys. I am so excited to see that one. I'm sorry, I gotta some bias.
TSM fan, come on.
No,
no, I'm just kidding. TSM Academy, with the type of roster that they are sporting, just alone in Hanser and Cody Sun, bring a ton of experience to the table that cannot be ignored at all. And even though I loved Hybrid's confidence, after the matchup in the concept, even he is like, you know what? I just need to sleep on it. I need to make sure that I'm getting my rest, and then we'll, figure out how we take on Hanser in the top lane. And that's not going to be an easy feat, because even though TSM Academy were essentially the seventh worst performing Academy team in the split, Hanser is probably one of the better top laners in that Academy pool, right? So It just seems like there's other holes that are plaguing that roster so far, and maybe that's where Winthrop University can figure out where they're going to attack those weaknesses. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for us tonight here on the Unified Grand Prix Day 1. The play-ins are over. Starting tomorrow, there will be a lower bracket for the double elimination. So if any teams do go out, they will have a second chance going through that lower bracket. But on behalf of all the broadcast staff and crew, I want to thank you all for tuning in to today's show. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, on twitch.tv/academy and twitch.tv/upsurge esports for the other games. Have a good night.